It's the Sports Nightly Preseason Top 25. Tonight.
And off to Otis Anderson. Got a ton of moves in his bag of tricks. Anderson still going. Got a block from Davis. Anderson free on the sideline. Touchdown. What a block by Davis. 44 yards to the house for Otis Anderson. A thing of beauty there on the ground for UCF.
Number 24, the Central Florida Knights.
And here to talk about UCF, Jason Beatty, who's with 24/7 Sports. Jason, appreciate you coming on. What's the mood like around Orlando about college football? Is it pessimistic? Where would you gauge everybody's thoughts if we're going to have this season or not?
Thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, it's a interesting take. I think Florida generally, I mean, you look at the government of Florida, they feel pretty positive about things. Cases have risen in this state the last couple of weeks, but I would say generally speaking, most feel somewhat confident about having a college football season. If you were to ask any UCF fan tomorrow, I think they'd expect to be, watching college football this fall, especially watching UCF.
Good to hear. Jason, I'm sure you're anxiously watching the ACC too, because a couple of big matchups are with members of that conference, correct?
Yeah, so UCF is about 7 weeks away from its season opener against North Carolina, and then a couple of weeks later they travel to Georgia Tech. Those are their two Power 5 games this season that they have scheduled. The whole hype around sophomore quarterback Sam Howell going against Dylan Gabriel. It would be a great season opener. It would be, potentially, likely a top 25 matchup. I think that's a huge game for UCF, and it would be a tragic loss for the schedule if they were to lose that game.
Before we jump into this year's team, give our audience an update on Mackenzie Milton. How's that young man doing?
Yeah, I mean, he's been good from what we've seen on social media. He's out there throwing the ball. We haven't seen a whole lot of running, but there have been some videos from these voluntary workouts that the team has done and some of the players are doing on their own. He's throwing the ball. The one big thing he has coming up later this month, before the end of the month, is a big checkup. One big final checkup that'll really determine whether he'll be able to suit up this season or not. So far he's been on track to return. We talked with him earlier this summer, and he said he wants to come back and he's planning on coming back. But this next big checkup with his doctors that really helped his leg will be huge on whether he can play this year or not.
All right, give me the breakdown then of Dylan Gabriel. How did he do his first year? What do you think his upside is?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were expecting Brandon Wimbush to be the starting quarterback. He transfers in from Notre Dame, and then in comes Dylan Gabriel, a freshman from Hawaii. Kind of felt like similar to Mackenzie Milton, a freshman from Hawaii, coming in and earning the starting role. And Mackenzie was even impressed with Dylan. Dylan, shattered multiple freshman records. He was 4th nationally in passing yards per completion. He was 13th nationally in passing efficiency. Really, really impressed. At times he looked like a freshman, right? Because that's what freshmen look like at times. But he made some mistakes on the road, had a couple too many turnovers. I think he'd be the first to admit that. But, for a freshman, he really, gained his voice on the field and in the locker room and wants to become a true leader for this team. And I think a lot of people were impressed with where he was. And, he's talked over and over again, and we've heard the coaches talk and Josh Heupel talk about how much effort and how much time he puts into learning, not only the playbook but the game of football at UCF. And I think we saw how he performed during the freshman season, and at times it was really impressive. So I think he's expected to, be even better this sophomore year.
Again, visiting with Jason Beatty, who covers the UCF Knights for 24/7 Sports. Last year's offense, top 10 pretty much in every national category. Any reason to not think they'll be that good again this year on that side of the ball?
Even if I wanted to find one, I don't really think I can. They return 8 starters on offense. Obviously, we just talked about Dylan Gabriel and what he brings. They lost Gabriel Davis, their number 1 target, to the NFL draft last season. They lost Adrian Killens to the Eagles, who we signed after the draft. Those are 2 guys right there, the main running back and top wide receiver they lose. But, returning, they have guys like Otis Anderson, Greg McCrae, Ole Miss transfer Trey Nixon, who was the 2nd leading receiver last year for them, Marlon Williams, big guy, Jacob Harris. This year they're also going to add Jalen Robinson, who transferred from Oklahoma. I really don't see a slowdown for this offense. Last year's offensive line at times struggled, but I think this year's offensive line will be even better. there's not a whole lot of indicators for why this offense shouldn't slow down at all, in my opinion.
All right, let's go to the other side of the ball. Defensively, obviously, when you play the style of offense that Coach Heupel does, you're going to put your defense out there an awful lot. How about that side of the ball? Where's the optimism? Where's the concern here as we get ready to start this season in a month?
Yeah, optimism is at the defensive backs. Richie Grant returned, Aaron Robinson. This last week, we've seen national watch lists be released. Both of them have been on the watch list for best defensive backs. Richie Grant, a couple of defensive best players in the nation. I just really think this defensive back group, Tay Gowan, Brandon Moore, Antoine Collier, really talented defensive back group. Defensive line, they lose a couple guys. They lost some leadership after this past season, but some younger guys like Randy Charlton, Trayvon Morris-Brash, who was an Under Armour All-American coming out of high school. We should see some impact from those guys. But, defensively, I think the defensive back group is really where the stars will shine with Richie Grant and Aaron Robinson. But, again, similar to the offense, they returned 8 starters on defense. So, we always talk about how do they compete against the fast-paced offense. And, over the years, last couple of seasons, some of the players on defense have joked that, when they go up against other offenses, it feels a little slower to them because they're going against UCF's fast-paced offense. But, generally they have a couple of gaps to fill on the defensive line, but that defensive back group is really talented.
All right, we talked about North Carolina leading the season off. How big a game and how big a week will it be when Cincinnati comes up late in the season?
Yeah, that's a huge game too. I mean, you look at their conference schedule. That's one of their first big tests. Cincinnati had their number last season after the last few seasons prior when UCF was just better a team. Last year they traveled to Cincinnati and Cincinnati got that top 25 win. I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati's ranked at that point in the season either. It'd be obviously coming to Orlando. UCF hasn't lost a home game in a couple of seasons now. I mean, I don't really see that changing, just the home atmosphere. But of course, with everything going on in this pandemic, it's going to be hard to see fans in the stands. But even if there is a capacity issue, we'll see what happens with that. But that's a big game and really will determine who comes out of the East in the American.
Very good. Jason, great stuff. Appreciate it. Let's hope you have some games to cover here in a few weeks.
I hope so. Thank you, guys.
You bet. Jason Beatty with UCF's 24/7, giving us a lowdown on the Knights. We've got them at 24. I think they could even be better than that. This is a pretty solid football team getting ready to line up down in Orlando.